What's up, hockey fans? In today's video, we're going to talk about 5 players whose careers ended too soon. For these guys, each of them had various injuries during their career, and by no means are these the only ones, but they are quite possibly the best. Let us know your thoughts on these guys, and before going any further, do us a solid and hit that subscribe and like button. These aren't in any particular order based on skill or player significance, so let's jump in and get started. First on our list, we're going to look at Cam Neely. Neely was drafted 9th overall by the Vancouver Canucks in the 1983 entry draft and spent his first 3 seasons of his career there. The goal-scoring prowess definitely didn't begin in Vancouver though, where he put up a pedestrian 51 goals in 201 games. Once he was traded to Boston in 1986, he began his torrid scoring pace and turned into one of the game's elite scorers, twice hitting the 50-goal mark. Neely still had a really nice career. During his best 5 years, he had a .61 goals per game average. If we take that average over the course of his entire 13-year career, based on the average games he played in those seasons, we're looking at a career 575 goal scorer, putting him at number 22 all-time, right ahead of Mike Bossy. Let's also not forget that Neely retired at 31 years old. If he's able to play another 4 or 5 more years, assuming no injuries of course, and his average goals per game drops down to even half of what it was, we're adding another 85 goals or so, putting him into the top 15 all-time. Had Neely been able to play at 100% for more than just the 5 years or so that he had, we could be looking at a power forward unmatched in NHL history. Another power forward that came into the league with a ton of expectations was Eric Lindros. The highly touted prospect was selected 1st overall by the Quebec Nordiques in the 1991 NHL entry draft. However, Lindros refused to play for the Nordiques and was eventually traded to the Philadelphia Flyers in 1992 in a blockbuster deal. His first few seasons were great, scoring seemingly at will and even winning the Hart Trophy and the Lester B. Pearson Award in 1995. That began the best 3-season stretch of his career as he posted a fantastic 1.54 points per game average and a return to the playoffs for the Flyers. Things started to go downhill fast for Lindros through the 97-98 season as he suffered his first concussion on a high hit by the Penguins' Darius Kasparaitis. Over the next 16 months or so, he would suffer 5 more concussions as well as a near-fatal collapsed lung. In the 2000 playoffs, he suffered the last of his 4 concussions in a 4-month period from a legendary hit by Scott Stevens. That was the last he would play for the Flyers. He was eventually traded to the Rangers, where he was a shell of his old self. Lindros finished his career having played 760 games and scoring 865 points, good enough for 1.14 points per game. The question is, where would he be if he didn't sustain all these concussions? Lindros only played 12 seasons, averaging only about 63 games per season. Using his career average, if he was able to jump that to even 70 or 72 games, we're looking at a career point total of nearly 1,000. He also played through a lockout-shortened season and sat out a season after manning a trade, so there's potential for another 100 or so more points, putting him at potentially over 1,100 for his career. Just like Cam Neely before him, we could be looking at another unmatched power forward in NHL history. Mike Bossy has a .762 career goals per game average, the highest in the history of the league. His career also ended way too early due to chronic back problems. Bossy is known as one of the greatest goal scorers in NHL history and drafted by the Islanders in 1977 and quickly became one of the league's most dominant players. In his rookie season, he scored 53 goals and won the Calder Trophy. He went on to score 50 or more goals in each of his first 9 seasons, becoming the first player in NHL history to do so. While winning 4 Stanley Cups, he also won the Conn Smythe, 3 Lady Bings, led the league in goals twice, and was named an All-Star 8 different times. While only playing 10 seasons, he still racked up an incredible 573 goals and over 1,100 points in only 752 games. Some of his other statistics are also mind-blowing. He topped 60 goals 5 times, he hit the magical 50 goals in 50 games once, he led the playoffs in goals 3 straight years, the only player to ever do that, and besides in his final season, his shooting percentage never fell below 20%. He also scored 50 goals 9 different times. Gretzky did that as well, but Bossy did it in 9 consecutive seasons. He honestly might be the greatest goal scorer in the history of the NHL. Let's dive in a bit and take a look at these numbers some more. Of the top 10 players to have played basically full careers, they average around 1,500 games played. Bossy is just over half of that. If we take his career goals per game of .762 and multiply that by those 1,500 games, we get over 1,100 goals scored. Obviously, we have to adjust for age and decline in production, but even dropping 200 goals off the total and he still tops in NHL history. We also can't forget that Bossy was only 31 years old when he retired. Even if we look at his average games played throughout his career and assume he plays until he's 35, that's another 200 plus goals he's scoring. It's just incredible thinking about the numbers he could have put up. Not many people consider Bossy to be on the Mount Rushmore of NHL greats, but if he hadn't sustained the back injuries that he did, maybe they would. The next player on our list revolutionized the game of hockey and is in conversation as the best player to ever play. Bobby Orr began his career with the Bruins in 1966 and quickly became known for his offensive skills and his ability to lead the team rush up the ice. He played 9 full seasons for the Bruins and finished his career with a few games with the Blackhawks before having to retire due to constant knee problems. Orr is the only defenseman to win the Hart Trophy as the NHL's MVP 3 times. He won 2 Art Ross trophies and won the Norris Trophy as NHL's best defenseman 8 straight times. He won the Stanley Cup twice along with the Conn Smythe Trophy both times, becoming the first player to win the award twice. We could also call him Mr. Plus Minus. He finished the 1970-71 season a plus 124. I know some people take that plus minus stat with a grain of salt, but that's just crazy. He finished his career at plus 582 and was never a minus player. Orr's last full season in the NHL was in 1974-75, playing a career-high 80 games and putting up 135 points, winning his last Norris Trophy and second Art Ross. Let's check out where his point totals could have taken him if his knees would have let him. Orr had career points per game average of 1.39 over the course of 657 games. He only played 9 full seasons. To put this in perspective, the number 10 defenseman for games played in NHL history played over 1,400 games. If Orr maintains his average over 1,400 games, we're looking at over 1,900 points. Now obviously we have to consider age and decline in production, so even if he were to play just 4 more years at that pace using the average games he played over the course of his 9 full years, we're looking at almost 100 points per season, which honestly may be low considering the point totals he was putting up the last few seasons he played. Had his knees been healthy and he been able to play a few more years, there's really no telling where else Orr's name might be on in the record books. Last but not least comes the player who is a favorite of this channel, Mario Lemieux. Where do you even begin when discussing Lemieux's career? He played 17 seasons with the Penguins, having been drafted in 1984 first overall. He quickly made his mark on the league, scoring on his first goal of his first shift, going on to win the Calder Trophy that season. Lemieux captained the Penguins to 2 Stanley Cups, countless other awards, trophies, and other records. His career was cut short by a variety of health issues, including a bad back, Hodgkin's disease, and radiation-related fatigue, and ultimately retiring for good due to an irregular heartbeat in 2006. I think the only way to look at his career is to compare it to the great one, Wayne Gretzky. In some circles, there is an ongoing argument on who is the better player, but maybe that's for another video. Lemieux and Gretzky shared the Art Ross Trophy a total of 16 times over a 17-year season. Over the course of Super Mario's career, which spanned 915 games, he amassed 690 goals and over 1,700 points, good for 1.88 points per game. Gretzky, on the other hand, played almost 1,500 games and of course has the NHL points record for over 2,800 points, good for 1.92 points per game. Had Lemieux actually played in all the games from his rookie season until he retired in 2006, we're looking at almost 1,100 goals and almost 2,700 points. Of course we can't just assume he'd play in all of those games. No one could do that. Mario retired for the first time after the 1997 season. At that point he was averaging almost 2 points per game. If we take that average and use, let's say, 1,400 games, since that's close to Gretzky's, we're at about 2,800 points. In the 92-93 season, Lemieux missed 2 months in the middle of the season for radiation therapy. He averaged 2.67 points per game that season and won the scoring title that year by putting up 160 points in only 60 games. At that pace, if he had played the entire season, Gretzky's single-season record for goals and points would have fallen. Lemieux's skill set might be unmatched in NHL history. Can you imagine the numbers he might have put up if his body hadn't failed him over the course of his career? And there you go, hockey fans, the top 5 players whose careers were cut short due to injury. I know there are plenty of other players who deserve to be recognized, so if you have anyone that deserves an honorable mention, leave it in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you can be notified when other videos are released, and check us out on social media. And remember, it's a great day for hockey.